No more hangers!
All right, the first villain I want to talk about is Joan Crawford, played by Faye Dunaway in Mommie, Dearest, directed by Frank Perry, 1981. This cult classic, with some of the greatest one-liners in cinema history, remains a very controversial film even 43 years later. It certainly was when it was released in 1981, when it was deemed exploitative garbage by the masses. Most people who knew Joan Crawford intimately, both friends and enemies, called the whole thing exaggerated slander meant to destroy Crawford's already contentious reputation. Even Betty Davis, Crawford's real-life nemesis, said that the movie isn't at all accurate. Crawford's own daughters, one of them being the author of the memoir of the same title in which the film is loosely based, said the movie was a complete lie and bastardization of the book. The daughters would later file a defamation case and win, so that should tell you something. In addition, Joan Crawford died in 1977, and she wasn't around to defend herself against the movie or the memoir, so that added to the controversy. Now, I'm certainly sensitive to this, and I even sympathize greatly, but I want to be clear. It is not Joan Crawford, the real-life person, that I am calling a villain. It is the character of Joan Crawford, fearlessly played by a bombastic and theatrical Faye Dunaway, who went bigger than Pacino in Scarface for this role, which sure makes for some unintentionally hilarious scenes, but nonetheless, the unhinged and hysterical Dunaway created one of the most memorable and chilling portrayals of a true blue manic narcissist who, like many maniacal and narcissistic parents, took her pessimism and rage out on her child in a psychotic performance cocktail of camp, tabloid slime, and demonic possession.
Don't fuck with me, fellas!
Dunaway's acting choices can be defined as tremendous risks, and I will always have respect for those who swing for the fences, whether they succeed or fail. Watch Mommie, Dearest tonight, and you will find yourself shaking your head in amazement, maybe even shock, saying, Jesus Christ, I cannot believe what I'm seeing right now. How did they let her get away with this? The performance is a masterful and messy, borderline mean portrayal that caused Faye Dunaway herself to become a villain after Mommie, Dearest was released. Before Mommie, Dearest, she had just won the Oscar for Best Actress in 1976's Network, directed by Sidney Lumet. Before Network, the Academy nominated her for 1974's Chinatown, directed by Roman Polanski, and
1967's
Bonnie and Clyde, directed by Arthur Penn. She was beloved by critics and audience members worldwide until she did Mommie, Dearest, which caused her career and public persona to take a hit. Over 3 decades later, in 2016, Dunaway opened up to People magazine, saying she originally thought her portrayal of Joan Crawford would be a, quote, window into a tortured soul, unquote. She said, quote, I think Mommie, Dearest turned my career in a direction where people would irretrievably have the wrong impression of me. I should have known better, but sometimes you're vulnerable and you don't realize what you're getting into. It's unfortunate they felt they had to make that kind of movie, but you can't be ashamed of the work you've done, unquote. Well, I'm certainly not ashamed of the respect I have for Faye Dunaway and her turn in Mommie, Dearest. She created something that made both her character and her real life self a baddie. If that isn't an across-the-board villain, I don't know what is. Her performance is truly unlike anything you've ever seen before, and it's certainly homework for any and all actors tasked with playing a villain of that magnitude. Have fun. Okay, and the second underrated villain I want to talk about is, and please forgive me for any mispronunciations you may hear, this is one of my favorite villains of all time. KYUNG-CHUL, played by Min-sik in I Saw the Devil, directed by Kim Ji-woon in 2010. Yeah. The Koreans just may be the best at fucked up operatic revenge films that walk the line between horror and thriller with a dash of comedy throughout. 2003's Old Boy and 2010's I Saw the Devil, to only name two. Both are incredibly violent experiences that keep you in a metaphorical chokehold until the end credits roll. And both of those films star who we're talking about right now, Min-sik, caught in the middle of someone taking diabolical revenge on him. In Old Boy, directed by Park Chan-wook, he is the protagonist and anti-hero who we root for throughout. In I Saw the Devil, he is one of the most ruthless villains in cinema history, seemingly incapable of possessing even a shred of remorse for his psychopathic actions against a sea of victims that include young women and children. Oh, and I just have to get this out of the way before I continue. In the twisted and brutal I Saw the Devil, Min-sik, he's got this very cool and calm demeanor, even while he's killing innocent people for pleasure. There's just something about him that reminds me of Benicio del Toro. So I'll be the first to say Min-sik is the Korean Benicio del Toro, and vice versa. I don't know, there's just, they have a similar vibe, physically and acting-wise. And good God, Min-sik is masterful as a monster in this cat and mouse catch and release revenge masterpiece. It's a quiet performance, believe it or not, which makes his representation of the devil all the more sinister, secretive, and dare I say, accurate. The less you know, the scarier. Without hamming it up or chewing the scenery or being obviously nuanced, which he is, by the way, nuanced. It's all in those soulless eyes of his, which emote regularly, albeit subtly, if you are paying attention. He keeps you on edge and, frankly, praying for his demise. I mean, when I was watching it, a number of times I yelled at the TV, "Would you just kill him already? Fucking kill him!" You might even find yourself cheering when he gets put in his place. You know, it's hard for an actor to pull off this kind of character, one with no redeeming qualities, and not make the performance one note, which is why Min-sik is one of today's greatest living actors for his turn as a villain in I Saw the Devil. Seriously, just... Okay, now the last and final character I would like to talk about is a criminally underrated villain, and that is Raymond LEMORE, played by Bernard-Pierre Donnadieu in The Vanishing, or Spoorloos, directed by George Slicer, 1988, okay? Now, I'm not talking about the inferior 1993 English language remake for Americans, which shockingly is also directed by George Slicer with Jeff Bridges as the bad guy. So if you haven't seen it, don't accidentally put in the 1993 version. Now, the original 1988 The Vanishing, when I first saw it, it's one of those movies that I couldn't turn away from. I had to see every single frame, especially the scenes involving the antagonist. Usually in movies, we see or hear about the villain doing something horrible, right? When the bad deed isn't a crime of passion, it never crosses our mind that he must have practiced for the bad deed. We rarely get to see the bad guy's premeditation on display, even acted out by the villain like an actor rehearsing for a play. For me, this is what separates The Vanishing from other thrillers and makes for one of the most interesting villains in cinema history. We meet the villain at around the 25-minute mark. At the 25-minute mark, we leave the protagonist's unfortunate situation and we begin to follow the man responsible. Bernard-Pierre Donnadieu's portrayal of Raymond LEMORE is incredibly charming, right? If you were to walk into the movie 25 minutes in, you would never realize how incredibly twisted this man is. You know, Around the 25-minute mark, he's having a nice outdoor lunch with his wife and his 2 daughters. The sun is out. Before everyone takes a seat, we see Raymond put something in the drawer of the table. When they are all seated, Raymond starts to open a bottle of wine, but he needs a corkscrew. Gabby, get the corkscrew from the drawer, he kindly asks his daughter. When she opens the drawer, it's filled with spiders, presumably put there by Raymond, causing Gabby to scream. Ooh, that was a beautiful scream. Let's hear it again, he says charmingly. His request causes the other daughter to insist that she can scream louder. She does. All smiles, all 4 of them end up screaming. It's cute, to be honest. But the reason for this is the furthest thing from cute. See, Raymond wants to know if anyone can hear someone screaming from their property. The next day, he asks a neighbor if he could hear anyone screaming yesterday. The neighbor didn't hear a thing, and we get to see how much this pleases Raymond, who waits for the neighbor to leave so he can smile to himself, overjoyed that he will be able to commit his acts of brutality in peace without anyone hearing the screaming that he is surely anticipating. A few scenes later, we find him pouring a sedative into a handkerchief and pressing it to his nose and mouth, causing him to pass out, all the while timing the whole process with a stopwatch. He wakes up, makes note of how long he was unconscious. Next, he rehearses the kidnapping, with the joy of a little boy playing, I might add. Outside his car, he asks an imaginary woman if she needs a ride. He politely opens the door for her so she can get in, and as he is rounding the car to get to the driver's side, he secretly pours the sedative into the handkerchief and gets into the car. "Excuse me," he says, and reaches across the imaginary woman to lock her door, and suddenly he throws his arm around her imaginary neck and violently pushes the poisoned handkerchief into her mouth and nose until she passes out. He finishes playing pretend, checks his watch, and makes note of how long everything took. The whole scene is extremely fascinating and creepy due to the fact that it's presented in this kind of cute way due to the pleasant, happy music playing over the scene. But ultimately, knowing that this man is literally practicing the kidnapping of the woman from the beginning of the film, making sure the bad deed goes smoothly, everything about this otherwise charming family man is insanely nefarious. Raymond is one of those villains that makes you very careful about trusting other people in the real world, for you never really know just how evil someone is. For all you know, the sweet old man bagging your groceries at Trader Joe's is secretly getting off to burying women alive, or that inspiring college professor you have, he's drowning cats on his weekends. You don't know. You just don't know. Raymond is the best example of all those true crime killers who get caught and the people who knew them best are being interviewed on the news saying, wow, I had no idea he was like this. He was such a family man, respected in the community, always dressed nice with a clean haircut, never missed a day at church. He was delightful. Right. See, this is what makes Bernard-Pierre Donnadieu's Raymond LEMORE one of the scariest and most underrated villains in cinema history.